Well, today we have Jen Edwards on the podcast. Welcome, Jen. How you doing?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me, Nick.
Yeah, we're going to talk about measuring health in Kidmin. It's a breakout you did at CPC, so you got a chance to share this kind of
Yeah.
content with that audience, hear their questions, have some conversations about that. But before we do that, give us an introduction to yourself.
So, like Nick said, my name is Jen Edwards. I'm from South Carolina. I live with my husband and three sons, and I finished a decade of kids ministry, full-time ministry, and then I decided that, we know turnover rates in kids ministry is extremely high, and so staying in anything for a decade seems wild. And when I finished that, I just realized that people could probably use my help, maybe some things that I've learned over the years. And so I just resource, coach, and consult and do some speaking here and there for just with the focus of kids ministry and helping those leaders be able to do what God has called them to do for longer.
Yeah, that's important, especially in a season when a lot of people are stepping out of
Yeah.
vocational ministry roles and things like that. So when you think about health, what led you to even pick that topic? That's probably not something I'd planned to ask, but when you're thinking about, hey, what I'm going to share at CPC, what led you to say, let's talk about measuring success beyond head
Yeah.
counts? Is it because you see so many people living on that and then the pressure that brings, or what was that like?
Yeah, I think the pressure we started to really feel it when COVID hit and the numbers were gone. They were missing. And then we started to build back our ministries, right? Our in-person ministries. And we just flipped the script again. And we were like, okay, now we're in person. And in my own experience, there was a lot of weight put on how fast can we get back to normal, right? And every staff meeting was, hey, what are your head counts? Let's go around the room. Well, head counts are
Mm,
great, and they're a good measure for success, right? If that's growing, then you know you're doing something right in your community or in your ministry, but they're only one layer of success, one layer of health. And that's what I wanted to tell my other Kidmin friends, like, "Hey, you're doing good, right? Your head counts are getting up. We're going back. People are starting to, especially where I am in South Carolina, starting to add their extra services back in, right? We're feeling healthy again." But if all you're counting is head counts, then you're really missing out on something. It's like, a team my son was a soccer player, so only focusing on winning so much that you forget that you already won a few games. And I think that's what we do in
mhm.
Kidsmen. We focus so much on the next Sunday that we forget that we're okay and we're doing good, and that everything we're doing, we're not gonna see the rewards of that on a Sunday, right? We're doing the long game
Bigger.
here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, how do you think most kids ministries measure health? Is it literally just attendance? Do you think that's like the normal? Is it just do that, or is there a few other things?
Yeah, so I think depending on where your church is at and what you do, and also honestly depending on your leadership above you and what's important to them. But I think a lot of times when I talk to Kidman people, head counts is the number one. We all agree on that. That's what everybody looks at, right? On a Monday or on a Tuesday staff meeting, you know those numbers. But then I think a lot of times, let's look at first time guests. Let's see how many first time guests are coming to us. That tells us, does the community know who we are? Is the word out about our church and what we have to offer and who we are and what our mission and our vision is? But I think what we need to look at too, especially now with what do they say, Nick? Like kids are only coming like 1.7 times
Mm,
or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
1.4 or 1.6 or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah,
It's dropped even more. Great.
times a month. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. I don't know where that point 4 is though. I never saw that. I only saw the 1.
I
So
know. And sometimes that's a whole other thing for me because I'll look that up in my church and our percentages were lower. So the statistic was that people used to come 1.8 times a month. I think is what people would say. And
mhm,
then I've heard, but I've never seen it in a study that it's lower. It's 1.4, 1.6. The problem I always have with that being a math and numbers guy and like a data guy is I want to know, did you account for the people that only came once? Cause I wouldn't count them. You know what I mean?
right,
They're skewing your date, remove that. I would almost even remove people that came 2 or 3 times. Cause there's just a sense of if some kids only come with their grandparents that they're only with 3 times a year,
right,
they're not really part of your church anyway. So I don't know if I would count that as your average. You care about them, you want to
right.
reach them. And so anyway, when I've done it in our church, what I would do is, and I'm not saying people need to do this, I would say, give me everybody that attended at least 5 times a year. And then
Yeah,
of that group, and you have to look at a whole year. You can't include the kid that just
exactly.
started
You
coming three
can't.
months ago.
Right.
He could only come
No.
8 times. You know what I mean? So it's of the people that have been here a year, and came at least 5 times, what average? And ours did dip. I can't tell you the exact number, but I remember from pre-pandemic, whatever it was lower in preschool and in elementary. So there's definitely truth to it. I just don't know if sometimes it's actually 1.4 times a month.
And, we can make the numbers do what we want them to do, right? Like, we
Oh
know
yeah, just
that. We
include
know we
some or
can make it
exclude some.
happen.
Yeah, sure.
Exactly. So I feel like when we're looking at head counts, that's the thing. Like, we can do with the head counts what we wanna do with the head counts, right? And be like, "Oh, no, our kids are coming."
Hmm.
But I think what we really could measure is maybe partnership, trust. We can measure trust in as kids ministry, especially in preschool ministry, and then measure our spiritual milestones and who's partnering with us in those in kids ministry. When we look at those things, because a lot of times when you look at like your overall like corporate numbers, you might look at like the givers or the people that are involved in small groups or the people that are serving. Well, that eliminates a lot for kids. But there's a lot of things we can look at that are great measures that we can say, hey, this is a success. This is, we can say we are healthy and we are successful as a kids ministry.
How do you some of those like the milestones I could see? Well, maybe we could start there because I'm thinking like practically, how do you measure some of these things, especially when you start talking about relationship or trust? Those
Yeah.
are big vague words. I do think there are ways you can see that for sure. But how do you think? Maybe we start with milestones. How do you think? What do you mean by milestones, and then how could leaders measure those?
Yeah. So in my denomination and in my church, we had baby dedication, child dedication. Then we
Hmm.
had salvation, baptism. And then we even had like, did they stick past kids ministry, right? Did they go on to
Okay.
youth
Yeah.
ministry? So we can measure those things. You can look at the total number of your active, like we just talked about, what's that active, that real number? Look at that for your infants and toddlers and see how many parents have followed with you in partnership for child dedication. You
Hmm.
can look at that number for salvations and your elementary kids programming. You can look at baptisms. And it's not because we want the children, like we're not going to push children through these milestones. What that means is that we're partnering with parents enough so that they have the things they need so that they can reach out to us and say, hey, I'm interested in child dedication, or my child has been talking to me about salvation, or my child wants to get baptized. And that's a great marker when you start to look at those numbers to say, okay, so this parent is aligned with us. That means
Hmm.
we're healthy with this family. They understand what our mission and our vision and our long-term goal is.
Yeah, and I wonder even. I remember talking to a church leader years ago who, with their partner with parent strategy, their church was pretty large and would do a lot of classes and things like that. And one of the things that they wanted to measure wasn't like how many parents are coming to each class, though they did measure that, but that would make them feel like failures. Cause like, let's say
Right.
this church was it was a large church. I don't remember the size, but let's say it was 3,000. It was a very large church. And, if they got like 50 people in a parent class, that would kind of feel like, like how
Yeah,
good is 50 out of, however many, maybe 1,000 parents or something.
right.
But their thing was, let's measure how many parents engage with a class in a year. So like, I
Yeah,
don't know how many classes they were doing. And that feels like what you're talking about too, because you could now, I don't know you'd almost have to just measure it against your own previous years, because I don't know
of
where the
course.
benchmark would be, but like how many parents did one of the milestones,
Right.
that year, dedication, baptism, salvation, even
Yeah,
graduation or something, like you're there for that, like on the other end, if that's student ministry, but if you're there, or going into 6th grade, like I know churches that'll do your first Bible as a milestone type thing, or something like
yeah.
that. So I could see that. And you go back and, of our average 100 parents that attend or 100 families that attend, we had 30 do a milestone event. Like that would be, to me, that'd be actually pretty good.
Yeah, that would be great. And I think what it falls on us again, like head counts can be so easy. This is not
Hmm.
gonna be easy. This is a lot of
No.
tracking, a lot of, relational moments, a lot of classes, like you say. You know, that's kind of where we have to go. We gotta dig a little deeper. That's what I'm talking about when we're measuring for real success. Because head counts can build you up, but man, they'll bring you back down real
Hmm.
fast. You
Oh
have a
yeah.
holiday Sunday, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're gone. Like, I live in South Carolina, when those families get on the boat, I'm like, "Oh, whoa,
Oh
we're
yeah.
not doing head counts today."
Yeah. See you later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
We just launched the third service on Sunday, which we've done many times in our history, but this is the first time since the pandemic. And it was a great Sunday. It was really high attendance and all that. It's like, but I know wait till this week. Don't
That
don't think that that was the new like that's our new average. It's like no,
right,
that's
right.
not that's not how that works. We'll
Exactly.
see how this goes. How about trust? You mentioned trust again. Very hard to measure, of course. Like
Yeah.
what could that look like? Or even just if it's maybe measure is not even the right word, but like know that it's happening or
Yeah.
that it's growing.
It's really how you can just evaluate in your context, in your ministry, what trust looks like. For me, we had small group leaders from infants all the way up. And that small group leader was the consistent voice and presence in the life of a child week to week to week. So we had the same lady. She was amazing. Miss Kim, give her a shout out. She was in infants every single week. She had a lot of babies come through the infant room. And you would think, like, well, how's she going to measure success in the infant room, right? They're not singing praises, they're not doing crafts. Well, the success that we measured was when parents would linger at pickup and ask her questions about parenting, ask her questions about bottle feeding and pacifiers and how I get my baby to sleep. That's such a trust level. They saw her as a resource to them. They didn't just see her as a babysitter. They saw her as a trusted person, not just in the life of their child, but in their parenting life.
Hmm.
And I would just tell her, like, put a little mark next to their name. We actually had a form that we used, and I'll give that to everybody. If they want to get in touch with me, I'll tell them how afterwards. But it's a room form, and she could just note all of those conversations that she had, and we just
Hmm.
kinda kept an eye on those things. And
Yeah.
if a mom was really struggling with something specific and we had a resource to send her that week, we would do it. So, a lot of times what we see as parents, right, they do the dash because they wanna get to lunch. If
Hmm.
you've got a few parents that start to linger,
Hmm.
especially in your preschool rooms where we're doing potty training talks and sleeping through the night and separation anxiety, all those things, and they start to linger and ask your small group leaders, knowing that they're professionals, I think that's trust right there, and we can watch it, and we can mark it.
Yeah, this would be harder to measure too because it's not all just based on trust, but like kids that like the kids develop a trust even at a year old or 2 years
Yes.
old, and then they're more comfortable in the room, right? Like now
Yep.
sometimes that takes two months, of the
Oh,
same
right, right,
leader
that's a long
every
game for
week.
sure, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. I mean, it happened with our youngest because she was 2 when the pandemic hit, not even. She wasn't even 2. And so, she got really attached to my wife, during that time. And so then when it was, however many months without in-person church, it wasn't that long, but 6 months or whatever it was, and you're back. I mean, it took her a while. It took her
Yes.
probably 6 months to get to the place where it was like, oh, it's okay. I'm used to this because unlike our other kids, she hadn't also experienced daycare and going to different
Exactly.
houses, different days, and she just had only known our home
Right.
for as long as she could remember, for 6 months. But that was a trust win, when we got to the
Yes.
point where it's like, oh, she's comfortable now in these rooms, and the leaders played a big role in that, which is
Of
huge.
course, and, that's the importance of a consistent leader, right? If
Mm-hmm.
she was seeing a new face every single time she came, that
Mm-hmm.
would make things dramatically harder. And,
Yes.
I had a mom drop off one time and she said, "I'm just so nervous. She's a pandemic baby." I was like, "They all are. I
Yeah,
promise.
yeah.
It's
It's
gonna
fine.
be
We're
okay."
together.
We have to
They
win
all
that
have
trust.
separation anxiety.
Exactly. Win that trust at every single level with every single child. And
Yeah.
then when you start to see it come back with the parents, I mean,
Yeah.
that's just such a great win.
That's awesome. How about, and maybe these are like related. So you were in a staff meeting where they were hitting those numbers every week.
Yeah.
And part of me wants to dig into that. And then I just want to talk about the challenge of like, when the work you put in doesn't show up in in whatever way you're measuring it.
Right.
Cause that's ministry for sure. Um, do you feel like that environment was there any even more tied to it? Cause I do every now and then, it's not often, but I'll run into a church where like people's performance reviews are tied to certain things like growth and numbers of the
Yeah.
ministry, kids or students or whatever, other tangible things like that, which I definitely have certain ways I feel like I'm a numbers person. I measure as many things as
Oh,
I
for
can.
sure. Yeah.
But I don't know, it gets a little hard for me when you're measuring things that you don't really have 100% control over. I don't even know if you have 20% control over. So,
Right, right.
I don't know. What
So
was that like for you?
I like numbers, and I think honestly, anyone in kids ministry, even if they don't like numbers, they're used to them, right? Because it's a ratio thing, right? We
Mhm.
know how many
Sure.
kids we have
Yep.
to have for one person, and we do the numbers, especially Saturday night when they start, like, declining, right? And you're
Uh-huh.
like,
Yeah.
"Ooh,
Yeah.
okay, let's do some
Yeah.
math real quick." So, I think we know our numbers, and I don't think that was ever the problem. I never felt bad about giving my numbers. Um, but I think if we personally, so if you're in a staff meeting and they're asking you your numbers and that's the first thing they want to know, right? And that can feel kind of daunting sometimes, like, ugh, here we go again. First thing I would say is know your numbers. Like, go
Mm,
in there confident and know your numbers. But then the second thing is, don't let that be your identity. Like, your
mm,
worth as a kids minister does not stand on the numbers of kids that came in. Like, more
mhm.
so, it should kinda stand on the upper leadership, right? Because our kids can't drive, right? Like, they gotta get
Sure.
those parents back. That's not on us. Um, but then the second layer is I would look at, like, percentages of kids. So, from your overall body, how much of that total number was actually kids? If you're in preschool, know that number. If you're in elementary, know that number. If you're over both, know those numbers because that percentage is really wise. Because if the parents come, the kids come type of thing. And knowing that percentage, like, oh, we're 20% of the overall
Mhm.
population.
Yeah.
And seeing that number is a really good giving number. So if you're asked your numbers, I would not just give one. I would be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, we had this number today, and by the way, that was this 20% of the church." You
Yeah.
know, make the numbers work for you. Don't feel pressure from that. A lot of times, you're right. Senior leadership base budgets, raises,
Yeah.
promotions,
Sure.
all
Yeah.
kinds of crazy stuff on numbers, right?
Yeah.
Um, and we know why. That's practical why. But I think we just need to start helping them, teach them, feed them the numbers that really matter.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I care about numbers. I look at them every week. I probably care about
Yeah.
them more than most people, but at the same time, and this is where I think it's important, it's like, I don't think of them as the worth, and anybody that even doesn't, like, is on a different team, or if they were on my team, I hope maybe that's a reminder for me of, like, I hope they understand that I believe this. I would always wanna know the numbers, but never would I be communicating, "Oh, that's a problem for you." I mean, like, I've literally, like, the question of, man, what ministry's hard. What happens when what you put in doesn't equal what you get
Yeah.
out? It's funny because I've had this conversation, I think, 3 times in the past 5 days. It started on Sunday talking about, we just did a big volunteer recruiting push for the third service, and it went really well. We got a lot of volunteers. We grew our team more in 5 weeks than we did all year last year, and last year was
Awesome.
a pretty good year. But we did not get all the elementary small group leaders we wanted. Like, people, and, that's one of the hardest roles. Weekly, you're
Right.
showing up. It was at earlier service and all that kind of stuff. And I was just talking with our elementary pastor about, yeah, that's one of the challenges of ministry. You did
Yeah.
all the good work. You did recruit volunteers, and sometimes it just still doesn't turn out.
Still
And then, like,
doesn't.
two nights later, I'm in my men's group and we're talking about it related to parenting. It's like the same thing. It's not a
Yeah.
formula. Like, there's a correlation between how we parent and intentionality and raising our kids in faith.
Yeah.
There's a correlation between how much time you put in recruiting volunteers and how many you get. But it's not an equation. It is not A plus B equals C.
Well, and isn't it great to know that we don't control it, right? We're
I
gonna do
think it is, but I think some people feel like they do. Or, like, even though they know
yeah.
they don't, they feel the pressure, like the failure. Like, oh,
Yeah.
it's
And
my
that
fault.
really does come from inside us, right? That comes from believing, probably some untruth things that we've told ourselves or that we've said is about our value as ministers and directors and pastors. But also it can come from, upper management. And when it does come from the bottom to you, you can probably self-correct that. You can have
Yeah.
some of those hard conversations. But man, when it's inside you and you're battling those thoughts of like, I did all this and it didn't work,
Yeah.
that's when you really just have to take some time and go to God and give that to him and understand that this is his ministry.
Mhm.
This is his church. This is his kiddos. And we're to steward it. We're to do our best. And if you can say at the end of a recruitment or at the end of a year or at the end of a Sunday even, I did what I was called to do. I did the best that I could, then we're going to see the benefits from that. Just
Yeah.
unfortunately in kids ministry, especially preschool ministry, you're probably not going to see a lot of those benefits right up
Yeah.
front,
Yeah.
but even statistics say like what kids choose to follow most people, I think it's like 85% of
Yeah.
population choose to follow the Lord before the age of 14.
Yeah, or at least, yeah, or at least 18. Sometimes I think because
Yeah.
of that 4-14 window is a high percentage, and
Yeah,
then it gets even higher if you go up to 18. But
exactly.
yes,
So
yes,
we
that's
know
true.
it's happening even
Yeah,
if we can't see it, you know?
yes, yes. Yeah, it is. Like you said earlier, it's a long game for sure.
Yeah,
That's great.
definitely.
Well, I hope this is encouraging for people, because especially if they are hanging too much on the numbers, I hope they're like, okay, How
Yeah.
can people connect with you? And especially, you
Oh, I would
mentioned that other
love
thing
that.
you could share.
Yeah, yeah. So I have a resource and I would love to share that. You can get in touch with me through Instagram and Facebook. On Facebook, I'm Kids Ministry Help with Jen, and I have a group there. And then on Instagram, I'm at Jen Faith Edwards. And then my website is Jennifer Faith Edwards. So it's my name. It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
So if you want to get in touch with me, I hope that you will. And if you're wanting to have some quick tool to measure some of these things we talked about, I have a resource for you, and you can pass that out to all of the leaders in your space and start watching those trends come of trust and conversations and relationships and milestones, all those things that are going to kind of boost you up a little and make you realize you're
Yeah.
better than what your number says some days, even on the hard
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. There's good work happening.
That's
Awesome. Well,
right.
Jen, thanks for coming on the podcast, for sharing this with us. I think it's going to be encouraging for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick.